Hello. I'm gonna, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna figure out a bunch of intros and like a thing, but this is just me talking about my experience at Lambda. So let me tell you about day two, which was yesterday, September the 8th. Let me get all my notes up. Probably should have been ready on this, but I'm not. I recorded one for day one. We'll see if it works out. I'm fighting with it right now because I don't know what I'm doing. But let me pull up yesterday's schedule. So, first off, we had our first class at 10 a.m. I walked to school, got there around 9:30. It's about an hour walk from where I am. I'm probably going to be repeating a bunch of stuff as well, so sorry about that. I'll try to keep it quick, concise, because basically this is just like to keep my family updated. Hydrate or dihydrate. So we started out with Philippa for our specifically VP of Actor Training and Drama School. That was Philippa. We were moved. We find out that we move around and do a lot of things. Okay, but the gist of this one was just kind of general advice. She was not introducing herself as much. She kind of did that yesterday, but she was just kind of encouraging us to fail and learn and try to be vulnerable, to be a generous peer, try everything, experience everything, and then evaluate it so that you can stay in the moment, be bold, be brave, take risks, train your imagination. Uncomfortable isn't unsafe, right? It's okay to be uncomfortable, and you should not strive to be uncomfortable, but you should work um, in the uncomfortable. Every class is crucial. Don't skip out. We need feedback for success and improvement. This is going to be a very rigorous program, so build up your stamina. Don't look at the problems. Look at the solutions. Try to be solution oriented. What can I do to solve this, or who can help? We're very process focused and not just result focused, since this is an educational experience. So really pay attention to that. And then she went in to ask all of the students what recent alumni, so people who had just graduated from the programs at from the courses at Lambda, and she asked them, "How would you finish this sentence? I wouldn't be a Lambda educated actor if I didn't know how." Dot dot dot. She got 19 answers. First, if I didn't know how to question, to play, to collaborate, to create, to prepare, to break down a text, to listen and respond, to breathe, to advocate for myself and others, to play an objective intention or want, to transform, to be vulnerable, to be inclusive, to support others, to reflect, to be professional, to be bold, to laugh at myself, to cope with the unexpected. And then later, someone in the class added to trust myself, which is kind of the idea behind these. And then she gave us a few minutes to categorize these between three different categories. First is we think that this will come easy. Next, we think we'll need to work on these. And then lastly, we think these will be really difficult. The ones that I think will come easy are to question, to play, to listen and respond, to breathe, to be vulnerable, to be inclusive, to support others, to reflect, to laugh at myself. Those I think are going to come easily. The ones that I feel I need to work on are to collaborate. I don't always know the balance between like how much to assert myself, how much to defer to someone else. So I'm interested, and I think that one's I'm going to need to work on it. Then to prepare, I always feel less than perfectly prepared. So I want to work on that. Also, I I don't know where to look. I'm like I see myself on the screen right now. I'm just using my laptop. So I look down here, but then like if I were looking at you guys, I would look up here. So ignore my eyes going digga 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 digga. Prepare. I always feel less than perfectly prepared, so I think I need to work on that one. I don't know if you can ever be fully prepared, but then we learn to advocate. I think I need to work on advocating for myself and others. I need to work on playing an objective, an intention, and a want, kind of the technical stuff to transform. I think really getting into a character and also transforming myself in the process, just like becoming a better actor, becoming a better person. To be professional, I'm immature sometimes. So I need to know the balance well. And then to cope with the unexpected, I think I can always work on that better. And then the things I really think I'm going to find difficult are to create. I've always wanted to write stuff and I've always wanted to create art, but I don't do it that often because I don't want it to be something that's already been done. I don't want this, I don't want that. It's eh. So then to break down the text, I think just the technical aspect of doing that is something I don't have a lot of experience with. Did I just put those two? Huh, I think I just had two that I think will be really difficult. And I'm probably overestimating myself, but we shall see. All right, my camera's backwards and I it's a thing. No worries. Then we discussed it. We shared with a partner. I shared with Ethan. He's rad. I still remember everyone's name that I learned yesterday. Well, hopefully I can keep it. Um, yeah, we just talked about it. Then we wrote down a few things that we're really worried about being at Lambda. I said that being out of my depth, I was a junior high school teacher before this. A lot of my peers and my classmates have worked professionally and have really been in the industry. I have not at all. I haven't done professional performance. I've done some semi-professional, some really little paid things, but uh, I don't think I'm just worried that I could be out of my depth. Um, Not being recognized in my undergrad, I felt that it took me a long time to be identified and to be recognized for what I was able to do. And then by that time, it was like my last semester. I'm worried that people might build barriers because of my faith. And I don't know, I'm very open about being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I think it's a defining characteristic of myself, but um, Christians don't have a good reputation right now due to a lot of people not acting very Christ-like. So I don't want to offend or people to build barriers because of that. I'm a little worried about losing myself potentially. And my last one is hurting my family by being away because I left Emma, my wife, and my unborn child, pregnant Emma. She's due next month in October, so I'll fly back for that. But that I'm being selfish in being here, and I'm afraid or worried that things will be worse off there. I shared that one with the class, with the whole group. We were gathered in a meeting hall with all the new students, not just the D's or the classicals. I don't think I shared what those letterings are. I'll say that really quick. MA and the MA and MFA in classical, they're the D's. First year D1, second year D2. MFA professional acting are the E's, and then E1, E2 for year one, year two. The MA in musical theater, they're the M's. That one makes sense. The directors are just the DERs. And because the BAs, year one are A's, years two are B's, year three are C's. So And then the foundations, which are the technical students, maybe? I don't remember what foundations are, but they're Fs. And then semester students are S1 or S2 if they're on first or second semester. Okay, so I might refer to us as the Ds. That's just our little title. Then that's those in the MFA and MA in classical acting. There's lots of jargon to learn. Then what are we really excited about? I feel super excited about the expertise. I feel excited about working with like people who are actively doing this, right? They're industry professionals. LAMDA goes out of its way to really invite and include legitimate professionals, which is super exciting. I'm really excited about making friends. I'm excited about connections and experiences. Um, I get to be like solely dedicated to one thing, which I'm really excited about. I love being single-minded and digging deep. I feel like I haven't had a thorough training ever. Like a lot of what I'm capable of and what I've learned and done has just been like my own individual study and then discussion, but never like trained by people who really know what they're doing. Um, yeah, and we talked about that for a little bit. It was totally chill. Then our second class was stage combat. It was going to be ensemble, but we didn't actually do that because of some scheduling conflict. So we did an intro to stage combat. I'm not going to break it down too much here because we just had what it was from 11:45 to 1:15, 12:45, 1.5 hours. Um, so Joe is our tutor, and he was trained by Rodney, who was at my audition, and worked with me in my audition. Rodney was a professional like fencer. I don't know if it's fencing. I think it was specific rapier competition. Anyway, so he kind of just broke down the whole history of weapons, starting with tools and how metal was expensive, and so a spear was like the main weapon for so long because you only needed a little piece of metal, and then you could create distance with a big long stick. And then that went from, well, I mean, sticks were before that, before we even had metal sticks, because you could create range and they were durable. And then spears, and then axes, and then hammers, bow and arrows, flails. So flails used to be to separate the wheat from the chaff. Nunchucks were rice threshers, which I thought was cool, which would separate the rice grain originally. And then ball and chain is an adapted flail. And so these are all tools that became weapons, and then specialized weapons, swords. Swords for a long time were just really expensive and not very effective because, like during the Bronze Age, the swords would get damaged really easily because bronze is a very soft metal. You could get it really sharp, but like one battle would trash your weapons. Um, so then the Bronze Age, that was the sword, but still mostly like pikes and spears, and then shields to protect your vital organs and vital spots like your armpits, because there's big arteries there, your armpits, your necks, and then like your groin. And then big shields were light and large, so you defend with something cheap and durable, and you attack with something that's a little more expensive. Technique wasn't important for a long time because you would just have your big shield and you could stab under it or over it to get at those vital spots. Then the Iron Age came in, but iron was still very scarce and expensive, and it was hard to use because it was a tougher metal. And so only wealthy people had swords, and it was a big symbol of. I wrote so many notes. It was a big symbol of status and wealth. I don't know the difference between like I don't status or status. I go back and forth. Status, status. Status feels right for a way, but I tend to say status. And then cavalry weaponry. So on horseback, like axes and swords. If there's cutting weapons or stabbing weapons, that's kind of the differentiation in in swords. Anyway, the Iron Age led to the Medieval Age with broadswords, and they started becoming more popular. Steel was introduced, but steel was still very expensive and difficult to get, and only certain places would um, produce it, like Damascus. And so the Spain became the importer of steel because they had connections with these Middle Eastern countries and Africa that was creating steel. And so, like Spanish steel, that's where that comes from, and that's why in um, well, maybe not. I was gonna say in Princess Bride, how Inigo Montoya was a Spanish swordsman. Anyway, so still super expensive. Average armor, because they just have really good armor, and so it was all about finding soft points because the armor, if you just like took a sword at someone's armor, it wouldn't do anything. It might not even bruise them. And so a lot of the time they would actually use the hilt, like the cross guard of the sword, and like turn it around, grab the blade, and use that as like a pike and try to aim for people's temple. Gruesome. And a lot of the time, the blade itself wasn't sharp, so they would hold their sword by the handle and then the blade and try to stab a lot and just keep the tip sharp because it just wasn't effective to be swinging it around, which I thought was fascinating. The gauntlet was the most expensive part because of all the moving things. And there's this idea that armor was really heavy and really difficult to move in, but that's not true. It was about 65 kilograms, and they were very mobile. And they used to like perform feats of athleticism to each other to like show like how capable they were, and they would like do obstacles and things. So um it was very good, and like these knights were like tanks. And then the Battle of Agincourt, which is featured in Henry V, as in V, not two, five, was kind of the moment where everyone realized that maybe armor isn't the best thing because there was a huge rainstorm, and then all the knights in France, who was supposed to be this unbeatable army because they had the most knights, they got stuck in the bog that was created because they had a bunch of sun and then a bunch of rain, and it just created this flash flood boggy thing. So all the knights got stuck in there, and then all the peasants and the fighters that came, they just massacred all of the knights. And so um yeah, they got stuck in the bog with their horses. The Welsh longbows, they started shooting them, and I'm gonna get this wrong. I think I wrote it down, but I think I wrote it down wrong because he said it different. But I think they could get 6 arrows off every 5 seconds. Um, so they would shoot one in the air and then one straight forward. So you just have just this barrage of arrows just coming at you. So the farmers killed almost all the knights and that were stuck in the bog. And so the whole world was just like, oh, maybe this isn't the best way to do things. And so then we start getting lighter armor and protection, like leathers and other. Um, and it was all about like the finesse of a sword. And so then rapiers were introduced in like the 1300s. Um, yeah, and that was like Shakespeare's weapon, the rapier, which is a double-edged sword that's kind of like it's the predecessor of a fencing foil, but it's got a little longer blade. Think of someone who might have one. It's probably what they were using actually in Princess Bride. That kind of the fancy handle, and then that idea, because you know how Inigo Montoya's father's blade is really like decorated, but it has holes in it. You can tell that that is to protect from a slashing weapon instead of or a cutting weapon instead of a stabbing weapon, because you could stab through the holes. So if it's a stabbing weapon or protecting against one, you would have a handguard that was totally covered, or like a buckle is what they call it. It's like attached. Um, Yeah. And then the rapiers were developed. The term swashbuckler, a rapier would be considered a swish or a swash, and then you would have a buckle, which was a very small shield. It could be like the size of a bowl or a dinner plate, not dinner plate. And you would put it on your hip, and as they would walk around, it would go ching, ching, ching. Um, yeah, a funny fact is that what became popular in like the Jacobean time was to have the longest rapiers, like thrusting rapiers, and the longer it was, like the more status, because it's like, oh, look at all this metal I can afford, and look at all this stuff. And so there would be like ridiculously, comically large swords that were like 6 feet, 7 feet, just as long as anyone could get it. And then they turn around and like knock, cut people and things. And so then that would start a duel. And these duels were bloody and awful. Anyway, those changed into more thrusting weapons, and then later into like Victorian fencing. And that was all kind of like basic. And then that was all like the right hand stuff. That's your main attack tool, and then the left hand were for like defensive weapons, so shields or bucklers. Sorry, I think I said buckle last time. Bucklers. So a swashbuckler. Sorry, I don't think I finished that thought. Swashbuckler is someone who has the buckle and their swash, and then they would walk around and their sword would hit against the buckler and it would ching, like go ting ting ting, you know. And so a swashbuckler was someone with a rapier and a buckler. And then you could also use a dagger. So you'd have a sword and a dagger, so you could defend with the dagger, get your opponent's weapon out of the way, and then stab with your rapier. Whips were also used, and fans sometimes as well, especially in the Restoration period. Everyone had fans, so they'd have these big metal fans, and they could use that, and make a big noise, and distract. Also, gloves were used sometimes. And then, yeah, also at this time, women were fencing was so highly regarded that women participated a lot too. And there's very famous women fencers because if you were good, that was just awesome. Good for you. And so it wasn't discriminated against for women when fencing became popular. All racket sports, here's another fun fact, were designed to help you practice sword fighting. So like tennis, that was all about perfecting swordplay. And this, uh, yeah, and it was around the, I think, Jacobean period where techniques started coming involved because after these knights um, kind of were coming out of fashion, and then there was social changes as the system that they had set up wasn't happening. So people like noble people had to figure out how to make money besides just owning land and having people pay them for it. So they would start teaching like how to fight, and swords were becoming more popular. And so that's where masters and techniques started coming in play. Yeah, so just super interesting stuff. After that, we had our Canvas and Azimuth training. I'm very familiar with Canvas. I used it as a student at BYU, Idaho, and I used it as a teacher at Sandridge. So, no big deal. Shout out Sandridge. I really don't know if these videos are going to work. If you're listening, then I guess they do. Probably not going to edit them at all, so cool. Then we had EDI, which is the British equivalent of DEI. It's just in a different world, so order. So equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I know there's like a bunch of political and weirdness around the idea and feelings about DEI or EDI, but it's just the way we approached it, and I think it's really important is just the idea of being aware of people. How can I respect people and not just make assumptions about them, not just lean into stereotypes about their certain group, whatever it may be, but how can I truly just understand and connect with people? It was really cool. Annabelle, the head of musical theater, she ran it with Maya, who is one of the representatives who supports like the EDI section, and is another faculty member. They had us start with getting in a circle and hearkening back to our great 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 grandmother, our grandmother's grandmother, so on and so forth, where we're in like sub-Saharan Africa, where the human race began. And and she pointed out one student had just made a big fire, and we had put a pot, and we're all going to sing around this fire together because uh, they believe historically that once pots were created and we started cooking food, we had time to start chanting and singing and storytelling. So the so when we weren't spending all of our time chasing antelope and trying to kill our food gazelle, right? Then that was when we started truly like connecting with each other and having that downtime while food cooked. And so we all got in a circle and she said, we're gonna sing vowels. So just the English vowels, I, O, right? So we picked a note and we picked a vowel and we sang. And some got louder or quieter, or we changed notes, or we connected, and we had our eyes closed during this, and it was just so cool to hear this cacophony of like harmony. I can't explain it. You kind of had to be there, but it was just so cool how we close our eyes and then we're just all the same, and we all picked different notes, and like on paper it wouldn't mesh, it wouldn't jive, but it was like ancestral in a way, and just felt like we all created this sound that was one. And we changed notes and we changed vowels like individuals, and it was just cool to like feel that unity. So that was sick. Um, yeah, and we just talked about a lot of things. Like in 2010 here in the UK, the Equality Act was passed, which um by law protects some marginalized groups such as age, sex, marriage, pregnancy, disability, race, sexual orientation, gender reassignment, religion, or belief. So all of those categories and their groups are protected by law, and any act against them is unlawful. So it's their job to, well, it's our job to make sure that we're not taking advantage, discriminating against, um, hurting or judging people, right? And I think that is great. I think that's really wonderful, and it's important for us to connect and understand one another. I'm running out of time, and this is getting very long, so I apologize. But that was the end of the day. I took a bunch of notes. I walked a bunch. After class, I some people went to the pub. It's like the thing to do. Ignore that little zit. It's going away. Um, Yeah, I didn't go to the pub today. I went yesterday. That was fun after our first day. And I don't drink, but I should chill and get to know people. But no, I went to Westfield, the big old mall, which they do malls well here. It's cool. And people go. Like in the US, people don't go to malls anymore. But went to Westfield, got a big old raincoat right there because it's supposed to rain today. I got a triple XL so I can put it over my backpack because my backpack is not waterproof. And I look ridiculous, but it's going to keep me dry, except for my feet because I didn't get wellies or rain boots. We'll see. Anyway, that's my day. I want to have this recorded at least to have something. I'm going to try to do it every morning to report on the day before. But oh, I didn't talk about booths on day one, but I'll explain those when we get to it. It was just something we're going to do, an acting exercise. But yeah, super stoked. Things are great. It's awesome. Happy to be alive. Talk to you again tomorrow about day three. It's Wednesday. We only have like one thing going on today, so maybe I can finally figure out how to like post these things. But if you're hearing this, then it's already posted, and I'm just blabbing on. Bye.